What do you do when you discover your own grandson is an enemy spy? This elderly woman faced an impossible choice. Her family's high-stakes gamble for his redemption will keep you on the edge of your seat.
The two men in their severe, dark suits looked entirely out of place in my cozy living room, sitting stiffly on the floral sofa my late husband Joseph and I had picked out 30 years ago. They looked like a pair of undertakers, their faces grim, their eyes missing the warmth that decent folks usually carry. They laid out the photographs on my polished coffee table, right next to my knitting basket, and a half-finished baby blanket for my pastor's newborn. The photos were grainy, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking the face in them. My grandson, Michael, my bright, beautiful, lost boy. "Ma'am," the taller man, Agent Harris, said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, "we have conclusive evidence that your grandson, Michael Carter, has been engaged in espionage against the United States on behalf of the Russian Federation. He's been transferring sensitive tech data, financial information. He's looking at a lifetime in a federal supermax prison. Treason." Treason! The word hung in the air, ugly and impossible. I looked at the photos again. Michael in a park in Vienna, handing a briefcase to a man with a distinctively Slavic face. Michael in a shadowy alley in Berlin, photographed through a long lens. Michael at a computer, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen, his expression tense. This couldn't be my grandson, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the boy who still called me every Sunday, even if his calls had become more distant lately. But as I stared at those pictures, a part of my heart, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, knew it was true. It explained so much. The secrecy around his international consulting job, the sudden influxes of money followed by long, desperate periods of being broke, his nervous energy, the shadows in his eyes he tried so hard to hide. Oh, you think you know this story? You see an old woman, a grandmother, her world crumbling as she learns her beloved grandson is a traitor. You're waiting for the tears, the denial, the helpless grief. And yes, all that was there, a cold, sickening knot in my stomach, but that's not the whole story, not even close. Because what those two FBI agents in my living room didn't know, what no one knew, was the real story behind those pictures, the web of debt, manipulation, and threats that had ensnared my grandson. And they certainly had no idea what his father, my son Robert, and I were about to do, the lines we were willing to cross to save our boy home. This isn't just a confession of my grandson's crime. This is a confession of the war we waged to save his soul. It had all started, I see now, after Michael graduated from college. He was brilliant, a computer genius, but always a bit of an idealist, a little too trusting. He got involved in online communities, gaming circles that had members from all over the world. That's where they must have spotted him. They saw his talent, but they must have also seen his weakness, a desperate need for validation, a quiet resentment that his skills weren't bringing him the wealth and recognition he felt he deserved. He got a job, a remote one, with a tech startup supposedly based in Cyprus. The pay was incredible, far more than any domestic company was offering. He was so proud. "I'm finally making it, Grandma," he'd told me, his eyes shining. "I'm going to take care of you and Dad." His father, my son, Robert, had been more cautious. Robert was a history professor, a man who understood the long, dark shadows of global politics. He'd questioned Michael about the company, about the nature of his work. But Michael had been vague, defensive, spouting techno-jargon about data analysis and predictive modeling that went over both our heads. We let it go. We wanted to believe in him. Then came the trips, Vienna, Berlin, Helsinki, always last minute, always secretive. He'd come back with expensive gifts, but also with a new haunted look in his eyes. He grew distant from his old friends, more irritable, more isolated. The money, it seemed, was a gilded cage. The day the agents showed up at my door, Robert was here with me. We were planning the church bake sale. We sat together on that floral sofa, a united front of disbelief and horror, as Agent Harris laid out the damning evidence. They showed us bank records of large, untraceable payments from offshore accounts. They showed us intercepted communications, coded messages. They showed us the face of our boy, our Michael, caught in a web so vast and so dangerous that it made me physically ill. "They've been monitoring him for months," the other agent, a younger man named Davis, said, his tone a little softer, perhaps seeing the utter devastation on our faces. "We believe he was coerced, at least initially, recruited online, then trapped by threats or debt. But the fact remains, ma'am, he crossed a line, a very serious one. He committed treason." They wanted our cooperation. They wanted us to help them bring him in quietly. They said if he cooperated fully, it might help his case. Help his case? From a lifetime in prison to what? 30 years? After they left, the silence in the room was a living entity, suffocating us. Robert, my quiet academic son, was pale, his hands shaking. I felt a strange calm settle over me, the kind of cold, preternatural clarity that comes only when you are standing at the absolute edge of a precipice. My grandson was not a monster. He was a fool, a brilliant, naive, trapped fool. He had been preyed upon, his ambition and his insecurities turned into weapons against him, against his country. And we, his family, had been too blind, too trusting to see it. "We can't let them take him, Robert," I said, my voice low but steady, infused with a certainty that surprised even me. Robert looked at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Mama, what are you saying? They're the FBI. He's a spy. What can we possibly do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But he is our blood, your son, my grandson. They see a traitor. I see a lost boy who needs to be brought home, not to a prison cell, home, to us." I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the old oak tree Joseph and I had planted when James, Robert's father, was just a boy. It had weathered hurricanes, droughts, all manner of storms. It was still standing, and so would we. They want our cooperation to bring him in quietly. All right, they'll get our cooperation, but it'll be on our terms. We're not going to help them lock him up and throw away the key. We're going to get to him first. We're going to talk to him, and we're going to turn him. We're going to turn our boy back to his own side, and we're going to make a deal to save him from a lifetime behind bars. We are going to risk everything we have to bring him home. The war had been declared, not by the FBI, but by me, a 72-year-old grandmother. And my first move would be to beat the federal government to my own grandson.
The FBI considers her grandson a traitor facing a life sentence, but Esther sees only a lost boy who has gotten into trouble. Can an elderly grandmother and her professor son outplay the special services and get to Michael first? And at what cost will their attempt to bring him home come?
The FBI agents, Harris and Davis, left a business card on my coffee table. A single, sterile white rectangle with a number to call if Michael made contact. They assumed we would be their compliant, terrified little helpers. They assumed we'd play by their rules. That was their first mistake. As soon as the door closed behind them, I looked at my son, Robert, and saw the same fierce, protective fire in his eyes that I felt burning in my own chest. The war for Michael's soul had begun, and we were its first unsanctioned soldiers. "They're watching us, you know," Robert said, his voice a low, tense whisper. He peered through the curtains at the unremarkable sedan parked down the street. that car wasn't there an hour ago. They'll be listening to our phones, tracking our movements. They're waiting for Michael to reach out so they can scoop him up. My son, the history professor, the man of books and quiet contemplation, was already thinking like a strategist. Good. We would need it. Then we can't use our phones, I said, my mind racing. And we can't act like anything is out of the ordinary. We'll go to the church bake sale tomorrow just like we planned. We'll smile and nod and talk about the weather. But tonight, we plan. Our first challenge was immense. How to find Michael before the federal government did. They had satellites, informants, technology I couldn't even imagine. We had my knowledge of his favorite childhood hiding spots and Robert's understanding of historical espionage tactics. It felt laughably inadequate, but it was all we had. Think, Robert, I urged, my voice sharp with urgency as we sat at my kitchen table, the damning photos now hidden away. When you were studying the Cold War, the underground networks, how did people communicate when they knew they were being watched? He thought for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table. Dead drops, cutouts, prearranged signals, coded messages in public forums, things far beyond us, Mama. No, I insisted. Think simpler. Think about Michael. He's not a trained spy from a movie. He's a scared, brilliant kid who got in over his head. Where would he go? Where would he feel safe, or at least anonymous? We spent hours brainstorming, our whispers a frantic counterpoint to the ticking clock. We went through old photo albums, old memories, searching for a clue. Did he have a favorite old haunt? An estranged friend he might trust? Then I remembered it. The library. Not just any library, but the old, dusty microfilm archives at the university where Robert taught. When Michael was a teenager and obsessed with cryptography and history, he'd spend hours there, scrolling through old newspapers, fascinated by the coded messages people used to place in the classifieds during World War II. It was his secret hideout, a place of quiet, analog anonymity and a digital world. He showed me once, I told Robert, my heart starting to beat a little faster, how he could use the library's public computers, rooting through different servers to post on obscure historical forums. He said it was almost untraceable if you knew what you were doing. He used a screen name, something from that old book he loved. The Count of Monte Cristo, Robert breathed, his eyes lighting up with a flicker of hope. His screen name was Abbe Faria, the wise old prisoner who taught Dante's everything. It was a long shot, a desperate one, but it was our long shot, born of love and memory, not surveillance reports. The next day, after a nerve-wracking performance of normalcy at the church bake sale, where I smiled and discussed my prize-winning tomato chutney until my face ached, Robert went to the university. He couldn't use his own office computer. It would be monitored. He had to use one of the public terminals in the main library, just as Michael would have. Meanwhile, my job was to create a diversion, to keep the watchers on me. I took a long, meandering walk to the grocery store, stopping to chat with neighbors, taking twice as long as usual, a harmless old woman going about her day. Every step felt heavy, every polite smile a mask for the frantic prayer in my heart. Robert came home that evening looking pale but resolute. He had found it. On an obscure forum dedicated to 19th century French literature, under a discussion about Dumas, a new post from a user named Abbe Faria had appeared just after the FBI had left my house. It was a single, cryptic line. The island's treasure is no longer safe, seeking a new vessel. The Pharaoh's light is out. It was gibberish to anyone else. To us, it was a desperate message. The island's treasure, Monte Cristo, it had to be a reference to something he considered valuable, probably the data he was supposed to protect or deliver. The Pharaoh's light is out? His contact, his handler, was gone or had abandoned him. seeking a new vessel. He was looking for a way out, for help. He was adrift and he was scared. Now we had to respond, to set up a meeting without tipping off the FBI. We spent another night planning. We settled on a method from one of Robert's history books, a simple coded message based on a shared text. We chose the Bible, a book we all knew. A series of numbers representing page, line, and word could spell out a message. Robert went back to the library the next day. His reply, posted under a different username, was simple. A string of numbers that, when decoded using our family's old King James Bible, read, "Your grandfather's favorite fishing spot, Pier 7, dawn, Friday." Joseph's old fishing spot, a dilapidated pier on a quiet, remote part of the coast, an hour's drive away, a place full of memories, a place the FBI would have no reason to associate with Michael. The next few days were an agony of waiting. Had he seen it? Would he understand? Would he trust it? Or would the FBI, with their sophisticated algorithms, somehow decipher our simple, old-fashioned code? On Thursday evening, a new message from Abe Faria appeared, a single number string. We rushed to the Bible, our hands shaking. Page 77, line 7, word 1. I. Page 23, line 1, word 5. Will. Page 91, line 15, word 2. B. Page 119, line 10, word 4. There. He was coming. Getting there for us was the final challenge. The sedan was still parked down the street. We were being watched. We had to create a plausible reason for a 72-year-old woman and her middle-aged son to leave town before dawn on a Friday. My church, it was the perfect cover. Our church was part of a charity network that delivered food to rural communities. I called my pastor. I told him Robert and I felt a sudden, powerful calling to volunteer for the pre-dawn delivery run to the coastal parishes the next morning. He was overjoyed, praising our community spirit. It was perfect. A legitimate reason to be on the road, heading in the right direction at the right time. Our movements would be noted, of course, but hopefully dismissed as exactly what they appeared to be, a son helping his devout mother with her charity work. As we prepared to leave in the dark, hours before sunrise, I clutched Robert's arm. Are we crazy, son, going up against the government like this for a boy who betrayed his country? Robert looked at me, his face grim in the dim light of the kitchen. He's not just a traitor, Mama. He's our family, and you don't abandon family, no matter what. We're bringing him home. The drive to the coast was a long, silent prayer whispered into the darkness of the pre-dawn hours. Robert drove the church van, his face illuminated by the green glow of the dashboard, a mask of grim concentration. I sat beside him, my hands clutching my purse, my gaze fixed on the endless ribbon of asphalt unfolding before us. Every pair of headlights in our rearview mirror sent a jolt of fear through me. Were we being followed, or was that just paranoia, a new and unwelcome companion on this impossible journey? We arrived at the designated turnoff, a small, unmarked dirt road, just as the first hint of gray began to soften the eastern sky. The old pier, Joseph's favorite fishing spot, was just as I remembered it, a skeletal finger of weathered wood pointing out into the vast, calm expanse of the Atlantic. The air was cool, thick with the scent of salt and low tide. It was a place of peace, of cherished memories. Now it felt like the site of a clandestine exchange in some spy novel, freighted with a terrifying significance. We waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. The sky began to blush with the soft pinks and oranges of dawn. What if he didn't come? What if it had been a trap? What if the FBI had deciphered our simple code and were waiting, watching, ready to close in? Then, a movement at the far end of the beach, near the dunes. A lone figure, huddled in a dark hooded sweatshirt, emerged from the shadows and began walking towards the pier, his movements hesitant, furtive. It was him, my Michael. My heart ached at the sight of him. Even from a distance, I could see the fear in his posture, the way he scanned the horizon, the way he hunched his shoulders as if expecting a blow. This was not the confident, brilliant boy I knew. This was a hunted animal. Robert and I got out of the van and walked to the entrance of the pier to meet him. When he saw us, he stopped, his face a mixture of profound relief and crushing shame. "Grandma? Dad?" His voice was a hoarse whisper, raw with emotion. I didn't wait. I closed the distance between us and wrapped my arms around him, holding him tight. He felt thin, fragile, all trembling energy and fear. He buried his face in my shoulder, and I felt the tremor of a sob run through his body. Robert stood beside us, his hand on Michael's back, a silent, solid presence. "We're here, son. We're here," Robert said, his voice thick. We led him to the end of the pier, as far from the road as we could get. The rising sun cast a golden path across the water, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded our family. How did you know?" Michael asked, finally looking at us, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. "The FBI, they visited you, didn't they?" "They did," I confirmed. "They told us everything, Michael, or at least what they think is everything." He flinched, looking away in shame. "It's true, Grandma. All of it. I was a fool. I got greedy, and then I got scared. They recruited me online, through one of my coding forums. It started with small jobs, data analysis, they called it. The money was intoxicating. By the time I realized who I was really working for, what I was really doing, it was too late. They had me. They had records of the payments, threats against you and Dad. I was trapped." His confession tumbled out, a torrent of youthful arrogance, foolish mistakes, and a deep, terrifying entanglement with people who played for the highest stakes. He hadn't been a master spy, he'd been a pawn, a brilliant but naive asset whose skills had been exploited. "They want you to help them bring me in," he said, his voice full of despair. "They told you that, right? To cooperate?" "Yes," Robert said, his voice firm. "But we're not going to do that." Michael looked up, his expression a mixture of confusion and a faint, desperate hope. "What do you mean?" "We're not going to let you spend the rest of your life rotting in a supermax prison, son," I said, taking his cold hands in mine. "What you did was wrong, Michael. Terribly wrong. You betrayed your country, and you betrayed our trust. But you are not a lost cause. You are our family. And we came here not to hand you over, but to bring you home." Then Robert laid out our plan, our desperate, half-cocked, beautiful plan. We wouldn't go to Agent Harris, not yet. We would hire the best national security lawyer we could find. Michael would turn himself in, yes, but not as a cornered traitor. He would turn himself in as a repentant American who had been coerced and manipulated and who was now willing to offer his complete cooperation, his knowledge of the Russian network, his skills, everything, to his own country in exchange for leniency, for a chance to undo some of the damage he had done. It's a long shot, son. There are no guarantees, but it's a better shot than what the Bureau is offering, which is a lifetime of regret behind bars. Michael stared at us, his eyes wide. "But the money, a lawyer like that, it would cost a fortune. I don't have anything left. Brenda took it all." I squeezed his hand. "Your grandfather, my first husband, left me a rainy day fund, Michael. It's been raining for a while now. We'll manage." He looked from my face to his father's, a war of fear, hope, and shame playing out in his eyes. To trust us, to take this path, required a leap of faith. It meant facing his crimes head-on, walking into the fire, armed with nothing but his family's love and a desperate hope for redemption. For a long moment, he was silent, the only sound the cry of a distant gull and the gentle lapping of the waves against the pier's old pilings. Then he nodded slowly. A single tear traced a path through the grime on his cheek. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, Dad. Okay, Grandma. I'll do it. I'll do whatever you say." The relief was so immense, it was like a physical blow. I pulled him into my arms again, holding my grandson, my lost boy, who was finally, just maybe, on his way back home. We weren't out of the woods yet, not by a long shot. The path ahead was fraught with danger, with legal battles, with the wrath of two governments. But as we stood there on that pier, the three of us, a broken but united family, with the sun rising over the horizon, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Not just hope, but the conviction that we were doing the right thing. We were risking everything, yes, but for the first time since this nightmare began, we weren't just victims of it. We were fighting back.
Michael has agreed to his family's risky plan, but this is only the beginning. Can they find a lawyer capable of standing up to the government? And how will the FBI react when they realize their helpers have started their own game to save their traitor? The next chapter promises even greater tension.
Smuggling my grandson, a man wanted for treason by the FBI, out of a coastal town and back into the quiet suburbs of Charleston felt like something out of a spy movie. Only my heart was pounding with real, grandmotherly terror, not manufactured thrills. We hid Michael in the basement of my house, a space filled with old furniture, forgotten Christmas decorations, and now the most dangerous secret of our lives. The church van was returned with polite thanks. Our story of charity work accepted without question. The FBI sedan was still parked down the street, its occupants oblivious, watching an empty nest. For now, we had won the first frantic sprint, but now the marathon began. Robert, my historian son, used his university connections and my rainy day fund to find the lawyer Ben Carter had recommended for a case this serious. Her name was Evelyn Reed. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was a former federal prosecutor from the National Security Division, a woman who had spent 20 years putting away spies before switching sides to defend them. She was based in Washington, D.C., was notoriously expensive, and had a reputation for being as brilliant as she was formidable. She was exactly who we needed. The initial consultation was a video call from a secure line Robert set up. Ms. Reed's face appeared on the laptop screen, sharp, intelligent, her eyes missing nothing. She listened to our entire, sordid story without interruption. Michael's recruitment, his crimes, our desperate plan to bring him home. When we finished, she was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "So, let me get this straight," she said finally, her voice a calm, precise instrument. "You currently have a fugitive wanted by the FBI for espionage hiding in your basement. You've actively evaded federal surveillance to make contact with him, and now you're calling me to fix it. Is that about the size of it?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, my voice small. Another long pause. I thought she was going to laugh and hang up. Instead, a slow, dangerous smile touched her lips. "I'll take the case." The weeks that followed were a masterclass in high-stakes legal maneuvering. Ms. Reed's strategy was audacious, bypassed the local FBI field office entirely. Those agents, Harris and Davis, their careers are tied to putting your grandson away for life. They have no incentive to make a deal. We go straight to Maine Justice, to the DOJ in Washington. We offer them something bigger than just one coerced, low-level asset. We offer them the whole network he was a part of. Michael's value isn't as a prisoner, as a source. While Ms. Reed prepared her opening salvo to the Department of Justice, our house became a secret debriefing center. Michael, hidden away in the basement, began the painstaking process of recounting everything he knew to Robert, who recorded it all,
his historian's mind perfect for organizing the chaotic mess of names, dates, and technical data. It was painful to watch. Michael was a ghost, haunted by what he'd done. He'd break down, weeping with shame, then force himself to continue, piecing together the web that had ensnared him. He revealed the true nature of his work. He wasn't just passing along data. He was a key node in a network designed to infiltrate the financial infrastructure of tech startups, a long-term Russian intelligence operation to steal intellectual property on a massive scale. He knew the handlers, the communication methods, the other assets. He was, as Ms. Reed has surmised, incredibly valuable. The call from Agent Harris came about a week after our trip to the pier. His voice was cold, laced with fury. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, dispensing with any pretense of politeness, "I have reason to believe you have made unauthorized contact with your grandson. I am reminding you that harboring a fugitive is a federal crime." I took a deep breath, Ms. Reed's coached words ready on my lips. "Agent Harris, any and all future communications regarding my grandson, Michael Carter, should be directed to my legal counsel, Miss Evelyn Reed, at her office in Washington, D.C. I'm sure she'll be in touch with your superiors shortly." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I could almost hear his teeth grinding. I had just declared war, and he knew it. "You're making a very big mistake, Mrs. Holloway." And he hung up. The pressure intensified. The FBI surveillance became more overt. The black sedan was now two. They followed Robert to the university. They followed me to the grocery store. They were trying to intimidate us, to make us crack. But we held firm, our little family a defiant island against the tide. Then Ms. Reed made her move. She presented her proffer to the DOJ, an outline of the intelligence Michael was willing to provide in exchange for a plea deal that would involve full cooperation, witness protection, and crucially, no prison time. The waiting for a response was agonizing. During this time, the greatest danger wasn't from the FBI, but from the other side. Michael's Russian handlers would know he had gone silent, that he had missed his check-in. They would assume the worst, that he had been captured, or that he had turned. We lived in constant fear that they might try to silence him permanently, that their reach could even extend into our quiet Charleston suburb. Every unfamiliar car, every late-night noise sent a fresh jolt of terror through me. We were fighting a war on two fronts, against our own government and against a shadowy foreign power, all to save our boy. The initial response from the DOJ finally came. They were interested, intrigued by the scope of the intelligence offered, but wary. They wanted proof. They wanted a sign of good faith before any deals would be discussed. They wanted Michael to help them identify another key operative in the network, someone still active on U.S. soil. It was a test, a dangerous, terrifying test. It would mean Michael actively working with U.S. intelligence, using his knowledge to help them spring a trap. If he succeeded, it would prove his value and his sincerity. If he failed, or if the Russians discovered the trap, he could be killed, and our entire gamble would have been for nothing. Ms. Reed laid out the stakes for us in another secure video call, her face grim. "This is the moment of truth, Michael. There's no turning back from this. You'd be a double agent effectively, even if just for one operation." I looked at my grandson's pale, determined face on the screen beside me. I saw the fear in his eyes, but I also saw something else. A flicker of the man he was meant to be, a chance to undo some of the harm he had done, a path to redemption, however perilous. The decision was his, and it would determine all our fates.
The Department of Justice has made its move, and now Michael's life and his family's future hang on a single decision. Will he agree to a deadly, dangerous operation to prove his loyalty and earn forgiveness? And can Esther and Robert protect him when he finds himself caught between a rock and a hard place, the FBI and Russian intelligence?
I watched my grandson's face as Ms. Reed laid out the government's dangerous proposition over the encrypted video call. I saw the fear there, stark and primal. But beneath it, I saw something else flicker to life. A sliver of the old Michael, the brilliant, challenge-loving boy who could solve any puzzle, beat any game. This was the ultimate puzzle, the ultimate game, with his life as the stakes. He looked from Ms. Reed's determined face on the screen to his father's, then to mine. His gaze held a question, not about what he should do, but whether we would be with him no matter the outcome. I gave him a slow, deliberate nod. We're here. We will not leave you. He took a deep breath. I'll do it, he said, his voice quiet but firm, a stark contrast to the broken whispers I'd heard on the pier. Tell them I'll do it. The weeks that followed were the most terrifying of my life, a period of hushed suspense where I felt like I was holding my breath for an eternity. The plan was set in motion. Michael, guided by Ms. Reed and a single tight-lipped contact from the DOJ named Mr. Shaw, became a double agent. From our basement, using a secure laptop provided by the government, he re-established contact with his Russian handlers, claiming he'd gone dark due to increased FBI surveillance, but was now ready to deliver a new, valuable piece of intelligence. The bait was a meticulously crafted set of false data about a new defense contractor's drone technology, created by the very agencies that wanted to put him in prison. The target was a high-level operative in the Russian network known only as Cobra, the very person the DOJ wanted to identify and capture. My role, and Robert's, was to maintain a facade of absolute normalcy. We attended church, I worked in my garden, we spoke to our neighbors. All the while, the FBI sedans were parked down the street, their occupants watching us, believing we were just a sad, defeated family waiting for the inevitable arrest. They had no idea a high-stakes counterintelligence operation was being run from my basement. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. There were nights I couldn't sleep, my mind filled with images of what could go wrong. A single slip-up from Michael, a moment of suspicion from his handlers, and he would be gone, erased. Robert felt it too. I'd find him in his study late at night, staring at old photos of Michael as a boy, his face a mask of anguish and fear. We were risking our boy's life on the hope that our government, a government he had betrayed, would honor a deal made with a renegade lawyer. The day of the exchange arrived. Michael was to meet a courier, who would then lead Cobra to the data drop. The entire operation was a ghost. We knew it was happening, but we had no details, no visibility. Mr. Shaw had been clear. For our safety, we were to know nothing. We just had to wait. To sit in our quiet house with its floral sofa and its terrible invisible tension and pray. That day was 1,000 years long. I tried to knit, but the needles kept slipping through my trembling fingers. Robert tried to read, but I noticed he hadn't turned a page in over an hour. We just sat, together, in silence, waiting for a call that would either save our family or shatter it forever. The call came just after dusk. It was Ms. Reed. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the exhaustion and something else. Relief. It's done, Esther. The operation was a success. They have Cobra in custody. Michael is safe. He's with Mr. Shaw's people now. He did everything right. He was brilliant. I sank into a chair, the strength leaving my limbs, a sob of pure, unadulterated relief catching in my throat. Safe. My boy was safe. The aftermath was a slow, carefully managed process. The deal was honored. In a sealed courtroom with Ms. Reed by his side, Michael pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of conspiracy. He provided a full debriefing, detailing everything he knew about the Russian network, years of intelligence that the government considered a massive win. In exchange for his full cooperation, past and future, he was sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation and entry into the Federal Witness Security Program. No prison time. He would have a new name, a new identity, a new life somewhere in America where his skills would be used by the very government he had once betrayed. He was free, but he was also gone. We were allowed one final meeting before he disappeared into his new life. It was in a nondescript government building, a sterile conference room that felt 1,000,000 miles from my cozy home. He looked different. Still my Michael, but older, sadder, wiser. The haunted look was gone, replaced with a quiet, somber resolve. He hugged Robert first, a long, silent embrace between a father and a son who had been to hell and back. Then he came to me. "Grandma," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you and Dad, you risked everything for me. After what I did, you're our family, Michael," I said, cupping his face in my hands, just as I had when he was a little boy. "You don't abandon family. You bring them home. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right, making you proud. You already have, baby. You already have." And then he was gone, walking out of the room with Mr. Shaw, not looking back, stepping into a future we would likely never be a part of. The FBI agents, Harris and Davis, were pulled from our street the next day. I never saw them again. The war was over. My life returned to a quiet rhythm. Robert went back to teaching his history classes, though with a new depth in his eyes. I went back to my quilting circle, my garden, my church bake sales. But something had changed, irrevocably. The world felt bigger, more dangerous, but my heart felt stronger. I had stared into the face of my grandson's betrayal, stood up to my own government, and wagered everything on the power of family, on the belief that even a lost soul could be brought back from the brink. It was a terrible, beautiful, heartbreaking victory. My grandson was alive, he was free, and he was, in the truest sense of the word, home, back on the right side. And I, his grandmother, could finally rest. My confession was complete.